From today onward, Yin will sleep in my bedroom, Jungkook announced. Minji gasped in surprise, as did everyone else at the table. You're sharing a room? Minji asked. Jungkook nodded, meeting their stunned expressions. But why? Sakura asked, the most shocked of them all. Why is Yin sleeping in your bedroom, Jungkook? The doctor advised her to avoid exhaustion, and I don't want her tiring herself out by climbing the stairs, Jungkook explained. She could share a room with Minji. Why does it have to be yours? Sakura protested. What's your problem? Minji interjected before Jungkook could reply. It's brother Jungkook's decision where sister Yin sleeps, their husband and wife. It's none of your business. The room fell silent as everyone turned to Minji, whose irritation was evident. It's not that I have a problem, Minji, but it's his right to decide, and it's their business, not anyone else's, Minji said firmly. Sakura swallowed hard, rendered speechless by Minji's words. Sakura didn't understand any of this. Wasn't Yin just a contract wife whom Jungkook was supposed to divorce? Why was she being treated like a queen? Sakura clenched her fists, her gaze locking with Jungkook's. Their eyes met in a silent battle of wills, the dining room atmosphere thick with tension. Finally, Jungkook broke the silence. Sakura, go back to Bizin tomorrow. Everyone was shocked by his words, especially Sakura. Why? Jungkook, are you kicking me out because of that woman? She asked, her voice trembling. Jungkook's gaze hardened. From the start, I warned everyone not to cause trouble for her, yet you've been openly hostile toward her. Sakura let out a bitter laugh. Why are you defending her? She's just your contract wife. Jungkook's tone turned sharp. Have you forgotten your place here? I make the rules in this house. When I say don't cause problems for her, I mean it. Have you fallen in love with her, Jungkook? Aren't you supposed to divorce her? Sakura pressed, her emotions boiling over. Jungkook's reply was firm. I won't divorce her. Everyone was stunned by his declaration, especially Sakura. Why? She demanded. Because I won't separate my child from their mother. Just admit you've fallen for her, Sakura cried, her emotions spilling over. Jungkook stared at her sharply. Even if I have fallen in love with her, that's none of your business. What matters is that you must leave this house tomorrow. I don't like anyone in this house defying me or breaking the rules I've set. Sakura's heart shattered upon hearing Jungkook's words. Unable to contain her emotions, she abruptly stood and ran to her room. She had no choice but to prepare herself because, starting tomorrow, she would no longer be welcome in this house. 10 minutes had passed. Even though Sakura had already left the dining table, the tense atmosphere lingered. Everyone kept their heads down, not daring to defy Jungkook, let alone meet his gaze. On the other side, Jungkook began to worry because Yin still hadn't come here. Finally, he ordered his sister, Minji, to wake her up. Minji, go wake Yin up and tell her to have dinner. Minji stood up slowly, stealing a glance at Jungkook, who was still sitting with a cold expression. Without saying much, she walked toward her brother's bedroom, feeling slightly nervous about his potential reaction if Yin still didn't wake up. Upon reaching the door, Minji knocked softly. Sister, it's me, Minji. Brother Jungkook asked me to wake you up, she said gently, but there was no answer. Minji knocked again, a little louder this time. Sister, I'm coming in, okay? She opened the door carefully and saw Yin still lying on the bed. Her face was pale, and her hair was slightly disheveled. Minji approached her and gently shook her shoulder. Sister, please wake up. Brother Jungkook is waiting for you in the dining room. But Yin only groaned softly, showing no intention of opening her eyes. Minji began to panic. Sister, are you okay? She asked, leaning closer to check. Realizing that Yin wasn't responding properly, Minji quickly left the room and ran back to the dining room. She stood before Jungkook, who immediately gave her a sharp look. Brother, I think she's not feeling well. Sister Yin looks pale and won't wake up, Minji reported anxiously. Jungkook rose from his seat without saying a word. With quick steps, he headed toward his bedroom, followed by Minji, who remained uneasy. Upon entering the room, Jungkook found Yin still asleep, her breathing sounding labored. Instantly, his cold expression shifted to one of concern. Yin, he called firmly while gently shaking her shoulder. Wake up. Yin slowly opened her eyes, looking at Jungkook weakly. I don't feel well, she murmured. Seeing her condition, Jungkook placed the back of his hand on her forehead to check her temperature. Her skin was warm to the touch. You have a fever, he said curtly, though there was an unmistakable tone of worry in his voice. Without hesitation, he instructed Minji to fetch some medicine and a cold compress from the kitchen. While waiting, Jungkook stayed by Yin's side. He watched her frail figure and let out a long sigh. You really don't know how to take care of yourself, he muttered, more to himself than to her. Soon, Minji returned with the medicine and a damp cloth. Jungkook took the cloth and placed it gently on Yin's forehead while Minji handed him the medicine. Minji, prepare some light food for her. She needs to eat something before taking the medicine, Jungkook ordered in a softer tone than usual. Minji nodded and quickly left, leaving the two of them alone. In the room, Jungkook remained by Yin's side, waiting patiently for her to feel better. The cold, authoritative aura he usually carried seemed to fade slightly, replaced by unspoken care. Yin opened her eyes slowly, finding Jungkook seated beside her with a serious expression. She never expected her usually cold husband to stay by her side like this. You don't have to worry, I'm fine, Yin said weakly, trying to smile despite her pale face. Jungkook stared at her sharply, seemingly unaffected by her words. Fine? You can't even get up. Don't take your health lightly, he retorted firmly, though there was a hint of concern in his tone. Yin nodded softly, too tired to argue. A moment later, Minji returned with a bowl of warm porridge and placed it on the bedside table. Brother, here's the porridge. Do you want me to help feed her? Minji asked cautiously. Jungkook shook his head. No need, I'll do it. You can leave. Minji was surprised by his response, but didn't dare object. She gave Yin a small smile before leaving the room. Deep down, she felt relieved to see Jungkook showing a rare side of his care. Once Minji left, Jungkook took the bowl of porridge and stirred it slowly to ensure it wasn't too hot. Eat a little, you need energy, he said, holding a spoonful of porridge to Yin's lips. Yin hesitated briefly, feeling awkward about being treated like this by Jungkook, but she knew he didn't like being refused, so she opened her mouth slowly and began eating the porridge. Thank you, Yin murmured softly after swallowing the first bite. Jungkook nodded slightly, remaining focused as he fed her. After a few more spoonfuls, he paused and looked at her seriously. You need to take better care of yourself. I don't like dealing with issues like this, he said. If you're unwell, it only makes things harder for everyone. Yin pouted slightly, feeling conflicted by his cold words. However, seeing Jungkook go out of his way to care for her still warmed her heart. I'll be more careful, Yin replied softly. She felt a twinge of emotion but tried not to show it. Jungkook nodded and finished feeding her the porridge before setting the bowl aside. Then he took the medicine and gently placed it in her mouth, handing her a glass of water to wash it down. Truthfully, Yin felt a little embarrassed being treated like this. Jungkook didn't need to feed her medicine as if she were a child reluctant to take it. Rest now. I'll make sure no one disturbs you, Jungkook said before standing to leave the room. But before he stepped out, Yin called out to him softly, Jungkook. Jungkook stopped and turned. What? Thank you for everything, Yin said weakly but sincerely. Jungkook looked at her briefly before giving a slight nod and leaving the room. Outside the door, he paused, letting out a long breath before resuming his usual stoic expression. Deep inside though, he felt relieved, knowing Yin was starting to recover. Jungkook walked into the living room and sat down with Minji, Hooningkae and Chaewon. They all remained silent, but couldn't hide their suppressed smiles. Jungkook's expression had returned to its usual cold demeanor, but his gaze seemed distant. Minji, Hooningkae and Chaewon exchanged glances, holding back laughter that was on the verge of escaping. They all knew, despite Jungkook's composed and firm nature, that his concern for Yin earlier was impossible to hide. So, Chaewon finally spoke up, trying to sound casual. You went all out for Yin, huh? Minji said you even fed her porridge. Minji giggled softly, nodding. Yeah, I didn't expect that. Normally, Brother Jungkook wouldn't go out of his way like that. He even used to make me fetch my own water when I was little, she teased, hoping to provoke her brother. Hooningkae chimed in. Looks like Brother Jungkook has really started to change after getting married. His tone was half serious, half teasing. Jungkook glanced at the three of them with a sharp look, silencing them for a few seconds. Don't you have anything more important to talk about? He said in a flat tone, but it was enough to make them exchange glances, suppressing their laughter again. Minji couldn't hold back any longer. Brother, it's okay to admit you were worried. We all saw how concerned you were for Yin earlier. It's normal, she said with a sly smile. Jungkook let out a long sigh, turning his gaze to the window. She's my wife. It's my responsibility to ensure she's alright, he replied shortly, as if brushing off their teasing remarks. But this is the first time I've seen you genuinely care about someone, Chaewon murmured softly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Jungkook glanced briefly at Chaewon, but didn't respond. Instead, He stood up and walked toward his bedroom door. "If you're done wasting time, remember you all have tasks to complete at the office tomorrow," he said before continuing on his way. As soon as Jungkook disappeared from their sight, the three of them burst into quiet laughter. He won't admit it, but he was obviously worried, Hooning Kaya said, shaking his head. "I like seeing this side of brother Jungkook. It's like seeing him as a normal human being," Minji added, laughing softly. Chaewon smiled warmly, feeling a strange sense of comfort from their conversation. "Well, maybe Yin is the only one who can melt his icy heart," she said before they continued their lighthearted chatter. Jungkook slowly opened the door and walked toward the bed. His gaze fell on Yin, who was now soundly asleep. He let out a relieved sigh, thankful that his wife could rest peacefully. Finally, he carefully climbed onto the bed and prepared to sleep. 3 hours later. Huh? Jungkook jolted awake, feeling a sharp slap on his face. He blinked rapidly, sitting upright on the bed out of reflex. With his eyes still wide, he turned around to see the person responsible. He froze when he saw a woman sleeping very close to him. "Was it Yin who just slapped me?" he wondered. Jungkook observed her carefully. She was sleeping deeply, her body sprawled across the bed. Yin's sleeping position was anything but graceful, both arms stretched out wide, her legs taking up as much space as possible. Her pajamas had ridden up, exposing her round belly. Jungkook pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration. He had nearly forgotten that this was the first time he was sharing a bed with his wife under normal circumstances. He had no idea she slept so recklessly. Usually, they would be intimate before sleeping together, and perhaps because of exhaustion back then, Yin's sleeping position hadn't been as wild. Now, Jungkook carefully tried to shift Yin's body away to create more space for himself. After a bit of effort, he let out a relieved sigh. Finally, he managed to lie down again without being squished by her limbs. Closing his eyes, he prepared to fall back asleep. A few minutes later. Not even 10 minutes had passed when another slap landed on Jungkook's face, this time hitting his nose squarely. This wasn't all. He soon felt a leg press heavily against his stomach. Jungkook, his face now covered by Yin's hand, struggled to keep calm. As soon as he managed to remove her hand, Yin shifted again, throwing one leg over his thigh and an arm across his chest. She clung to him tightly. "Jungkook," Yin murmured in her sleep. Still half asleep, she clung to Jungkook even tighter, murmuring again, "Only you, only Jungkook." After saying that, Yin stopped mumbling and fell silent again, her breathing steady. Jungkook, staring up at the ceiling, remained motionless. He didn't react, only listened to her words and felt the warmth of her hands and legs embracing him. Finally, he turned his head slightly to look at her. Her peaceful sleeping face and steady breathing caught his attention. "You're so troublesome," he muttered quietly. Then, with a small sigh, he closed his eyes again. He needed to get some rest. Work awaited him tomorrow. Yin stretched out her arms as she woke up. This morning, her body felt refreshed. It seemed she had slept very soundly last night. She turned to her side and noticed her husband was still fast asleep. A sense of relief filled her heart today. She had woken up before Jungkook. She gazed at him intently, a smile forming on her lips. So handsome, she thought to herself. But the warmth in her expression quickly faded, replaced by a tinge of sadness as she remembered the truth of their marriage, a contract that would eventually come to an end. Not wanting to dwell on her sorrow, Yin got up and headed to the bathroom to freshen up and prepare for breakfast. Yin stepped out of Jungkook's bedroom, planning to head to the dining room. Jungkook had also woken up but was currently in the shower, getting ready for work. As she approached the doorway, she suddenly noticed Sakura walking down the hallway, dragging 2 large suitcases. Yin frowned slightly, her eyebrows knitting together in confusion. "Where is she going?" she muttered to herself. Curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to approach Sakura. However, as soon as Sakura noticed Yin coming closer, her gaze turned sharp, her eyes brimming with unmistakable hatred. Yin stopped in her tracks, taken aback by the intensity of Sakura's glare. Still, she forced herself to remain calm. "Are you going somewhere, Sakura?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with curiosity. Sakura let out a bitter laugh, her lips curling into a smirk. "Why do you care? Don't act like you're concerned," she snapped, her tone dripping with venom. Yin's chest tightened at the hostility, but she held her ground. "I was just asking. If you need help, I can." "I don't need anything from you," Sakura interrupted, her voice cold. She grabbed the handles of her suitcases tighter and took a step closer. "You think you're so important now, don't you? Just because you're married to Jungkook?" Yin's eyes widened at the accusation, but before she could respond, Sakura continued, her voice growing harsher. "Enjoy it while it lasts. because we both know this marriage is nothing but a facade." Yin was starting to get irritated. She had just opened her mouth to respond to Sakura's words when a commanding voice from behind interrupted her thoughts. "You still have the audacity to cause trouble here, Sakura. How shameless can you be?" Both Yin and Sakura turned toward the source of the voice. Jungkook stood there, dressed sharply in a suit, his tie not fully fastened, his expression cold and authoritative. His piercing gaze was fixed on Sakura, filling the air with a tense atmosphere. Sakura paled immediately, though she tried to maintain her composure. "I didn't do anything," she said defensively, though her voice wavered. Jungkook stepped closer, his gaze unrelenting. "Don't even think about lying to me. I heard everything," he said coldly. "You know you have no place here anymore. Leave before I lose my patience entirely." Sakura froze, clearly wanting to argue, but her courage seemed to crumble under Jungkook's intimidating presence. She glanced briefly at Yin before glaring at Jungkook with disdain. "Don't think I'll forget this. You'll regret this, Jungkook. Your threats mean nothing to me. If I wanted to, I could destroy you without a second thought," Jungkook replied curtly. "And one more thing, stop dragging Yin into your hatred. She's my wife, you know that." Sakura huffed in frustration, then snatched her suitcases and stormed out of the house without another word. Once Sakura was out of sight, Jungkook turned to Yin, who still stood frozen in place, looking somewhat bewildered by the events that had just unfolded. "You don't need to concern yourself with her words," Jungkook said in a calmer tone, though his expression remained firm. Yin nodded slowly, her emotions swirling. She wanted to ask more but decided against it. Her focus shifted to Jungkook's tie, which was still untidy. Quietly, Yin stepped closer. "Let me fix it for you," she murmured, reaching out to straighten his tie. Jungkook didn't protest and allowed her to adjust it until it was neatly in place. "Done. Let's go have breakfast," Yin said softly once she finished, and they both headed to the dining room. When they entered the dining room, Minji, Kae, and Chaewon were already seated. Yin stood hesitantly at the doorway, her thoughts still racing. The image of Sakura dragging her suitcases away kept replaying in her mind, leaving her increasingly confused. After a moment, she gathered her courage and spoke. "Jungkook," she called softly, interrupting him just as he picked up his fork and spoon. Jungkook turned his attention to her, raising an eyebrow. "What?" Not only Jungkook, but Minji, Kae, and Chaewon also looked at her curiously, waiting to hear what she had to say. Yin hesitated, biting her lip, before finally voicing the question that had been bothering her. "Sakura, was she kicked out? What really happened?" Minji, Kae, and Chaewon exchanged surprised glances, while Jungkook paused for a moment, his expression unreadable. After a brief silence, he sighed. "She crossed the line. That's all you need to know," he replied curtly, his tone as cold as ever. "But, wasn't that a bit harsh?" Yin asked cautiously. She knew it wasn't her place to interfere, but she couldn't suppress her curiosity or the faint sympathy she felt for Sakura, despite the woman's hostility toward her. Jungkook narrowed his eyes, his gaze growing sharper. "In this house, no one is allowed to challenge or oppose me. That's the rule." His voice was calm but carried an unmistakable finality. Yin felt a chill run down her spine. Jungkook's words carried an air of absolute authority, leaving no room for argument. His piercing gaze made her unconsciously take a step back, fear creeping into her heart. Jungkook, noticing the change in her demeanor, let out a long sigh. He softened slightly, though his tone remained firm. "I won't allow anyone to bring chaos into this house, including Sakura. This isn't your concern, so stop worrying about it." Yin nodded silently, though the fear lingered. She was beginning to realize just how formidable Jungkook could be. His authoritative and unyielding side left her uncertain about the man she had married. "Now, sit and eat," Jungkook instructed, gesturing toward the table. "I don't have time for drama this morning." Without a word, Yin obeyed and took her seat. She glanced at Minji, Kae, and Chaewon, who remained quiet and focused on their meals. Yin, however, couldn't shake the thought that Jungkook's strict and commanding nature could easily turn ruthless if challenged. 4 months later, Jungkook had just returned from work. As he stepped into the living room, a familiar voice caught his attention. "I'm so bored." Jungkook's eyes landed on Yin, who was lounging on the long sofa while the maid casually sat beside her, keeping her company as they watched television. However, the maid quickly noticed Jungkook's presence. "Mr. Jungkook, you're home," she said, immediately standing to greet him. Yin, hearing this, also sat up straight, quickly adjusting the hem of her pajama skirt that had ridden up. "Make me some coffee," Jungkook ordered. "Right away, sir. Please wait a moment," the maid replied. "Would you like some cake as well? I bought some earlier for Mrs. Yin. There's still some left." That sounds good, Jungkook agreed, and the maid headed to the kitchen to prepare his coffee. Meanwhile, Jungkook approached the sofa, standing near Yin, who was now sitting upright. Yin blinked and looked up at him, sensing that he had something to say. "What is it?" she asked, meeting his gaze. "I have tomorrow off. Plenty of free time," Jungkook stated plainly. An awkward silence immediately enveloped them. Jungkook's tone was neutral, while Yin blinked, unsure of the relevance of his announcement. "Oh, really?" Yin replied, confused about why he was sharing this with her. Jungkook frowned slightly. Had she already forgotten what she'd said earlier? "Perfect timing, Mr. Jungkook," the maid interjected, returning with a tray of coffee and cake. Mrs. Yin was just saying she needed some refreshing activities. "Refreshing?" Jungkook asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, Mrs. Yin said she's been feeling cooped up at home all day, bored while waiting for you to come back," the maid explained with a knowing smile. "That's not," Yin stammered, embarrassed that her complaints had been revealed. "What kind of refreshing?" Jungkook pressed, still looking puzzled. The maid smiled cheekily at Yin before answering, "Maybe a little outing, sir. Perhaps a night at a hotel or something?" Yin gulped nervously. The maid had exposed her idle thoughts, things she'd only mentioned in passing. There was no way Jungkook would agree to something like that, especially since their marriage was just a contract that would eventually end in divorce. As the maid left them alone, Yin avoided Jungkook's gaze, keeping her head down. Jungkook, however, continued to study her with an unreadable expression. "Where do you want to go?" Those 5 words made Yin's eyes widen in disbelief. She stared at him, shocked. "You mentioned you wanted to go out," Jungkook added, his tone calm but firm. "Are you serious? You'd actually take me?" Yin stammered, hardly able to believe what she was hearing. "Yes, I'm free tomorrow. We'll stay at a hotel for one night," Jungkook replied matter-of-factly. Yin blinked rapidly, her excitement building. Unable to contain her happiness, she started fidgeting in place. "Okay, you pick the place. I'll agree to go anywhere you take me. I'm going to pack right now," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm barely contained as she hurried toward their bedroom. Jungkook sighed in exasperation as he watched her dart away. Was she even aware that she was pregnant and shouldn't be rushing around like that? He shook his head, annoyed, as he settled on the sofa and pulled out his phone. He began searching for hotels, determined to book a place for their short getaway the next day. At exactly 1 in the afternoon, Yin and her husband arrived at their destination hotel. The expectant mother was now seated on a plush sofa in the spacious and luxurious lobby. From her seat, Yin watched Jungkook at the far end of the room, checking in at the reception desk. Yin couldn't help but smile. She gently rubbed her slightly rounded belly and spoke softly as if the baby inside her could hear. "Your daddy is checking us in. Soon we'll go to the room. Mommy can't wait to see it," she said, letting her unborn child in on the moment. Not long after, Jungkook returned and informed her that he had the key. Yin stood up, and they walked toward the elevator together. Her face felt warm, her excitement evident, as she struggled to contain her happiness. They soon arrived at their floor. Jungkook led the way to the door and opened it, gesturing for Yin to enter first. "I already ordered lunch earlier, so it'll arrive shortly," Jungkook said, making Yin's eyes sparkle with joy. Yin covered her mouth in awe. Outside their room was a spacious terrace with a private infinity pool that offered a stunning view of Jeju's coastline. "Let's eat lunch first," Jungkook suggested after a hotel staff member delivered their order. Neither of them had eaten yet, as they planned to enjoy their meal after checking in. Yin nodded and followed her husband to the dining area. They sat across from each other and enjoyed a quiet, peaceful lunch together. After finishing their lunch, Yin went straight to the bathroom to change into her swimsuit. On their way to the hotel, they had stopped to shop for everything they might need for their stay. Not long after, Yin emerged from the bathroom wearing a swimsuit. It was a rather revealing design that showed her slightly rounded belly. Her cheeks flushed as she noticed Jungkook's eyes intently following her. Embarrassed, she quickly turned and walked toward the private pool outside their hotel room, trying to escape his gaze. The wind was quite strong as Yin smiled and made her way to the pool steps, intending to step into the water. But wait, the sudden sound of Jungkook's voice made her stop and turn. He was already approaching her. "Are you going to swim too?" Yin asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "No," Jungkook replied, making her frown slightly. Despite his answer, Jungkook pulled off his shirt, revealing his toned upper body, and then removed his pants, leaving only black swim shorts. He stepped into the pool, which was deep enough to reach his chest, and moved closer to where Yin was standing by the pool's edge. Jungkook tilted his head up to look at her. "Sit by the edge," he instructed. Yin blinked before nodding. She changed her plan, deciding not to use the slippery pool steps. Instead, she sat on the edge, letting her legs dangle in the water. Is it cold? Jungkook asked. No, Yin replied, feeling the pleasantly cool water on her skin. Alright, come here. Jungkook stretched out his arms toward her, inviting her to jump into them. Yin's heart raced in her chest. Is this real? It feels too perfect to be a dream, she thought. Without hesitation, she leaped into the pool, immediately wrapping her arms around Jungkook as he caught her. She gasped, realizing the pool was deeper than she had expected. Panicking slightly, she clung tightly to him, wrapping her arms around his neck for support. Jungkook held her securely, his hands steady on her waist. Now, face to face at such close proximity, their gazes locked. Although their hair was still dry, their bodies glistened with the water. The cool breeze brushed against their skin, adding a slight chill to the moment. Yin's heart thudded wildly as Jungkook leaned closer. The moment their lips met, Yin froze in surprise. It was a soft, tender kiss, so comforting that it made her feel warm despite the water around them. But she didn't want to waste it. Slowly, she began to respond, wrapping her arms tighter around his neck, deepening the kiss. For now, she decided to forget the looming thought that Jungkook might one day leave her. She just wanted to enjoy the moment, her fleeting happiness as Jungkook's wife, the man she had loved for so long and still did. Her arms clung to his neck, and her legs wrapped around his waist to account for the pool's depth and height difference. Their heads tilted in opposite directions, making their kiss even deeper. Although Yin tried to keep up, she found herself gasping for breath as the kiss dragged on. Jungkook noticed and pulled away slightly, gazing at her. Tired already? Want to get out? Jungkook asked, his face close to hers. But Yin quickly shook her head in panic. No, I'm not tired, she replied, unwilling for Jungkook to end their beautiful moment so soon. But you're already out of breath, Jungkook said. It's not because I'm tired, Yin quickly responded. Jungkook chuckled, amused by her reaction. His eyes lingered on her flushed face. Have you heard about water exercises for pregnant women? He asked suddenly. Yes. Why? Want to try it? Jungkook asked, his tone teasing. Yin frowned, studying his face. As she realized his implication, her eyes widened in disbelief. But not like that, Yin stammered, her cheeks reddening further. It's still water exercise, isn't it? Jungkook teased. Yin couldn't help but laugh, her embarrassment melting into amusement. But then, she glanced around, suddenly aware of their surroundings. Jungkook, this is outdoor, Yin whispered. Afraid? Jungkook asked, his tone almost challenging. Of course I am. What if someone sees us? Yin said, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of doing anything outdoors. So what if they do? We're husband and wife, Jungkook replied nonchalantly. Yin's eyes widened at his nonchalant response. Her lips parted in shock as she stared at him, her breathing uneven. This was the first time Jungkook had said something so openly affectionate to her. Before she could process it further, Jungkook leaned in and kissed her again, this time, not on her lips but on her neck. Biting her lip to suppress a gasp, Yin hugged him tighter, feeling a wave of joy she couldn't express in words. Why did Jungkook feel so warm and tender today? Whatever the reason, she was overwhelmed with happiness. Minutes passed, and Yin began to worry that Jungkook might actually take his teasing too far in the pool. Gently, she pressed her hands against his chest, urging him to stop. Jungkook, please. Not here, it's embarrassing, Yin whined softly. Jungkook chuckled quietly, still holding his wife securely. Of course, we're not doing it here. That was just a joke. I wouldn't let anyone freely watch us. This show is far too precious, you know. With that, Jungkook effortlessly lifted Yin out of the pool, carrying her inside, where they continued in privacy. 8 months later, Yin had just managed to put their 4-month-old baby boy to sleep. His small face looked so peaceful, with his eyes closed and his little lips occasionally moving as if he was having a sweet dream. The baby's face resembled Jungkook so much, his eyes, his nose, even the small expressions he often made, warming Yin's heart. She gazed at her son with so much love, feeling at peace every time she looked at him. But a few seconds later, her smile faded. Her heart suddenly felt heavy and tight, as if something was pressing on her chest. Now, she had given birth to Jungkook's child, a child who was the reason they were still together. But soon, everything would end. The agreement they made at the beginning of their marriage echoed clearly in her mind. After their child was born, they would separate. No love, no promises for the future, just a temporary contract that bound her. Tears began to fall without her realizing. Yin felt stupid, very stupid. All this time, she had let herself be lulled by Jungkook's kindness. He had treated her so well, made her feel special, made her feel loved, even though she knew that, in his heart, all of it was just temporary. Sweet memories with Jungkook replayed in her mind like a movie she couldn't stop. Jungkook held her hand tightly when she was about to give birth. He gently kissed her forehead every night before bed, and Jungkook looked at her with so much pride when he saw their baby for the first time. All of it felt real, but also like a dream that was about to end. Yin gently wiped her tears, afraid their baby might wake up. "I shouldn't have hoped," she murmured softly. But how could she not hope? How could she not fall in love with the man who was the father of her child, the man who had always been there for her, even with the boundaries they had created? She lowered her head, touching their baby's small hand. "What should mommy do? Mommy's not ready to lose your dad. Mommy doesn't know what to do," she whispered with a trembling voice. She remembered the short message she received from her husband earlier this afternoon. "Prepare yourself tonight. It's been 4 days since I touched you. Rest and gather your strength. When I get home, I don't want you to be exhausted." Yin bit her lip. Why did Jungkook still think about doing that when they were about to divorce soon? If it continued like this, how would Yin be able to forget him later? And their baby was already 4 months old. Why hadn't Jungkook mentioned the divorce yet? Meanwhile, Yin had deliberately not brought it up with Jungkook because she hoped she could continue breastfeeding her baby exclusively for at least 6 months. Maybe Jungkook thought the same way, which was why he kept delaying it. But now their baby was already 4 months old, which meant they might be divorced in another 2 months. "I can't let Jungkook keep touching me. I'll find a way to make sure he doesn't touch me tonight." 3 hours later, the clock showed it was 10 p.m., and Yin's heart kept pounding. It wouldn't be long before her husband arrived home. Just a few minutes after thinking this, she heard the door to their room slowly creak open, revealing her husband. Their eyes met, and Jungkook smiled softly at her. He walked closer, sat on the edge of the bed, and began removing his tie and suit. His gentle gaze towards her made Yin's heart melt, but she quickly shook off the warm feelings that spread through her heart. Without saying much, Jungkook leaned in and kissed his wife's lips gently. Yin wanted to pull away, but for some reason, her heart couldn't bear it. In the end, she returned her husband's kiss. Tears almost fell as she imagined that soon she wouldn't feel this kiss again. As time passed, Yin found herself lying down. Just as Jungkook was about to continue his activities, he suddenly froze when he noticed something strange in her area. Jungkook shifted slightly and looked closer at her body. He saw a red stain. He was startled and his gaze immediately shifted to Yin, which he had taken off earlier without noticing anything unusual. "I'm on my period," Yin said, clutching the bed sheets. Jungkook paused when he heard that. Her period? He thought, looking back at the red stain in her area. Meanwhile, Yin's heart was racing. This was a tense moment because she didn't know whether she had succeeded or not. All that was on her mind was that she didn't want to do it tonight or ever again. It was enough. She didn't want her feelings for him to grow any deeper. Suddenly, Jungkook brought his finger close to her and poked the red stain. "Jungkook, what are you doing?" Yin yelled, not expecting Jungkook to poke the period blood from her body. Jungkook then sniffed his finger and immediately smiled, putting his finger in his mouth. Yin's eyes widened. Was she caught? Yin immediately bit her lip hard. She was caught. She was caught lying. Yin had actually created her period blood using vanilla cream and added red food coloring to make it resemble blood. But she forgot that Jungkook was not the type of man who could be fooled so easily. "What should I do with a lying wife?" Jungkook said with a smirk, after licking the vanilla cream from his finger. Yin swallowed hard when she saw this. She was so stupid, too stupid. And in the end, that night happened again. 2 hours later, the two of them were now lying side by side, staring at the ceiling in silence. The tension between them lingered like an invisible barrier neither dared to break. "Why don't you want to do this with me anymore?" Jungkook finally spoke, his voice calm but laced with frustration. "To the point where you even made fake blood just to avoid me?" Yin remained silent, her chest heavy with the effort to hold back tears. Jungkook turned his head, and his heart sank when he saw her trembling lips and teary eyes. Without hesitation, he reached for her hand, clasping it gently. "Have I hurt you?" "I probably have. I'm sorry," Jungkook said softly. That was all it took for Yin to break. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she began to sob. "Please, don't touch me anymore starting tonight," she whispered between sobs. "I've given you a child, and soon we'll get divorced, just like you wanted." Jungkook abruptly shifted, turning to face her. His expression was no longer cold, but full of emotion. Yin, startled, tried to turn her back to him, but Jungkook stopped her, his hand firm yet gentle. "Yin, I'm sorry," Jungkook began, his voice thick with sincerity. "The truth is, I don't plan to divorce you anymore." Yin froze and turned to look at him, her tear-streaked face filled with confusion. What do you mean? At first, Jungkook confessed, I thought I wanted to stay with you only because I didn't want to separate you from our child. But if I told you that was the reason, I was afraid you'd misunderstand and think I was just using you. He hesitated, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. Back then, I couldn't admit that I'd fallen for you because I didn't even understand my own feelings. Our relationship didn't start like a normal one, and I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to explain what I was feeling. Yin narrowed her eyes, her voice firm. What are you trying to say, Jungkook? Be clear, tell me exactly how you feel. Jungkook took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. Alright, at first, yes. I just wanted a child, but I tried to respect you, Yin. When people cause problems for you, I hated it. I saw you as my pride, someone who deserved respect. He paused, his gaze softening. And I'm attracted to you physically. Do you know how addictive you are to me? You might think it's just lust, and maybe it started that way, but you've taken over my thoughts completely. Yin's face turned bright red, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't interrupt him, wanting to hear everything he had to say. Gradually, I began to want to have you forever. I couldn't bear the thought of another man having you after divorcing me. Honestly, I feel like I'm being selfish, and if I told you about this, I was afraid you'd hate me and think I was taking away your chance to be happy with someone else. He reached out to wipe the tears from Yin's face, his fingers trembling. After our son was born, I saw how happy you were with him. I didn't want to ruin that happiness. I wanted to see you smile every day, and I wanted to be the reason behind your smile. Jungkook's voice wavered. I've been trying to make you happy before asking you to stay with me forever, but it seems like I failed, and now you're crying because of me. Yin clenched her fists, her emotions swirling between anger and affection. Finally, she reached out and pinched Jungkook's waist hard, making him wince in pain. You're such an idiot, and because of your stupidity, I've been suffering, she exclaimed. Jungkook groaned, rubbing the spot she'd pinched. Yes, I know, I'm sorry. I'm clueless when it comes to emotions. I'm only good at making money. Yin huffed at his self-deprecating tone, but a thought crossed her mind. Is Sakura no longer in this house because she caused trouble with me? Jungkook's expression hardened briefly. I warned everyone in this house to respect you because you're my wife, but she crossed the line by going against you. Anyone who disrespects the lady of this house has no place here. Yin stared at him intently, her gaze unwavering. Jungkook raised an eyebrow. What is it? Say it now, Yin demanded. Tell me you love me. I can't stand your idiocy any longer. A small smile tugged at Jungkook's lips as he cupped her face gently. I love you, my wife. Yin smiled and nodded her head. Yes, I love you too, my husband. All you had to do was say that. You're so foolish. Jungkook chuckled before pulling her into a tight embrace. Next week, we're throwing a grand wedding celebration, he whispered against her hair. What? Yin pulled back, startled. I want everyone to know you're my wife, Jungkook said with a wide smile. Yin couldn't help but laugh. Fine, but I don't want Sakura invited to the party. Don't even think about it. Understood, my queen, Jungkook replied with a playful salute. Yin burst into laughter, feeling lighter than she had in months. For the first time, she felt like their future together might truly hold happiness.